Yeah, so Cindy, back in April, I took 2 of my 4 kids to a park in Meridian, Idaho, and I was late to this play date, and I sat down next to my friends, and about 5 minutes later, 3 officers showed up, and I was pretty frustrated because we'd been locked in our houses for 6 weeks with kids, and everyone was a little bit frazzled. And I asked some friends to keep an eye on my kids while I got up to find out why the park was closed, when we could sit at picnic tables and congregate in the grass and play basketball. So it just seemed really arbitrary. So I got up to ask the officer some questions, and we started having a discussion about, what about our right to peaceably assemble, and why can we go to Lowe's and Walmart? Why is that open? But the playground that we pay taxes on, why can't we be here with our kids? We want this playground to be open. And there was a lot of frustrated moms there, and we were all standing on the wood chips next to the playground, which I didn't think was a problem because the playground equipment was what was wrapped off with caution tape, crime scene tape. And so at one point, this officer points just to me, he singles me out and says to me, "I'm giving you 5 seconds." And I just, in this moment, was just like, I'm taking my kids to a playground. I'm not handing out roofies. And so I just looked at him and I said, "Fine, arrest me for being in a park, do it." And I turned around. I was just like, "Okay, I give up, go ahead." And he cuffed me and took me to his car. And despite the fact that they let out over 400 inmates at our Ada County jail, they still booked me into jail. I was charged with a trespassing charge, which carries up to 6 months in jail and up to a $1,000 fine.
So what's the situation now with the legal case?
Yeah, so the state of Idaho took over my case, and they're prosecuting it now. And I did have a jury trial set at the end of February, but just recently our Idaho Supreme Court came out and said that all jury trials are indefinitely suspended, so I have no right to a speedy trial. And it just hangs over my head, basically. I'm just waiting for it to be finished. But I have no idea when that's going to be now. So, and it'll be a year in April.
It's remarkable. So, Tim, you're actually a police officer, so I'd like to hear what your reaction is to this.
My reaction to this whole deal, it was very surreal for me when it first happened. It honestly took me several days and weeks for me to wrap my head around this, and as time has continued on, to be honest with you, it's difficult as a police officer, as long as I have and have been an officer, and the accomplishments that I've had in my career of putting bad guys in jail that really need to be there, and being in situations of keeping the peace and actually helping people that need to be helped, feels like it's been completely diluted, and that, officers across the nation are now, our role isn't what it used to be, or it seems to be, and it's a situation that to me is just incredibly disappointing, because it's not what anybody that I work with or myself signed up to do, to be involved in politics and to be used as a political tool.
I'd like to hear more about that in a minute, but first, I'm wondering what the reaction is of your kids. I mean, at the time when it happened and now that it's been dragging on so long, and especially with a father who's a police officer.
Sure. So initially, it was kind of a mixed reaction. I mean, because we are a law enforcement family, and so it wasn't as scary for my children initially when the officers came, because that's kind of like family for us. And I asked them later, because I wasn't able to speak with them until I got out of jail. And I spoke with them later, asking them how they felt, and they said...
Can I just quickly ask, how long were you in jail?
It was probably a couple hours. And yeah, they had put me there alone because they had done like a COVID testing. And I'd been put in the back of this hot car, and they claimed that I had a fever. Even though I didn't have a fever, I was really stressed out that I had just been arrested and was actually a little bit worried about what the husband would say, right? And so initially the reaction with my kids were, "Mom, you got arrested," and and then there was discussion of, we were scared when they took you away in the car, and now sometimes when we go to parks, the question is this park okay? Like, are police officers going to show up? I mean, and there's some hesitancy of even just being stressed out at a playground, which you would never think that you'd have to take your kids somewhere and that they would be anxious about you just playing with your children. So it's been kind of mixed with them. So one of my son actually at one point was like, "Mom, you're amazing. I want to be just like you when I grow up." And I thought, how amazing that is. It was a tricky situation, because in that moment, as you're being counted down to, like, is what I'm doing wrong? And I just knew taking my kids to the park, it wasn't wrong. And so I had to, in that moment, stand and draw my line, in the wood chips and say, I'm doing nothing wrong. You can take me to jail for doing nothing wrong. So.
And Tim, how has this been on the family and kids? It seems it's obviously quite an ordeal, and one you didn't ask for.
It's been stressful. I'm going to be honest with you. It's really, for me, put into perspective of the authority that we give certain people in our society in America, and how important that responsibility is. Because while I speak for myself that I would arrest somebody or take enforcement action upon somebody, and that's another day for me, and I go home to my family at the end of the night, how much it really affects people later on down the road, and that it's a very powerful responsibility. And you get that up front a little bit, but this experience has really put that into perspective for me. How much we entrust certain people in our society to make the right decisions, and to be somebody that's going to uphold what they said they were going to do and do it for the right reasons.
What kind of reaction have you been getting since you've been kind of thrust into the limelight? How have things been the last 8 months, 9 months, however long that's been?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question, because initially, my circle of friends were like, "You're amazing, you did the right thing, we're proud of you." And then a lot of the left was like, "You're awful for going out and spreading COVID at a playground." It's interesting going from just a nobody to when somebody sees you on the street, they recognize you and they know who you are, right? I've had people message me and say, "I really hated you for what you did. I thought you were doing something wrong, but I realize now you just had your eyes open to something much earlier than a lot of people did." And one of the reasons why is because I had a friend early on who was diagnosed with COVID, and she talked about that for her, it was basically a cold. She'd been sicker, much sicker in her life than in this instance. And so in that time I thought, I don't think COVID is what they're making it out to be. And so for me, taking my kids to a playground was no different than any other day because of what COVID was and represented to me. So, overall, people call me like, an American hero. And I don't see myself as that. I just see myself as someone who's trying to stand my ground when I, know that something is wrong, because that's what we all need to be doing.
So, Tim, I'll end with you. Can you just let us know what's the mood on the force right now, and maybe how it might have been transformed over the last, 8 or 10 months?
I can't speak for everybody. I can speak for myself, those that I associate with. That, again, I just kind of go back to this isn't what we signed up for. Those of us in this profession know that each day that we go to work, we might not come home at the end of the day. And we want it to be, if that's going to happen, we want it to be for a righteous cause. We want it to be for something that means something. And with what's going on and the politics of what's happening nationally and regionally and locally, I honestly to say, morale is not very good, to be honest with you, because this isn't what we signed up to do. And we didn't sign up to go scare people into wearing masks or to make sure that they're standing 6 feet apart. I walk into a store on duty now and I see people, hurriedly putting on masks like I'm going to come in and, have some sort of enforcement action upon them or something like that. I very much, and those that I work with are very much about people's rights, and we're very respectful of those. And I'm fortunate enough to work in a place overall where, as an agency, we do respect that, and not everybody in our community seems to understand that. And so, the more pressure that we have, and the slimmer the needle we have to thread it takes its toll on guys, and it's one of those situations where we never thought this was going to happen, and so you have guys wondering if they're going to make it to retirement, considering other employment, and I'm fearful that it's gonna weed out the good ones, is what I'm fearful of.
All right, well, thank you both so much for joining us and sharing your story. We really appreciate it. I know it's not easy.